Fitz of Writing.
Hey there, Scribbles and Scratches. Welcome to the Fitz of Writing. I am your host this episode, R.M. Johnson. And once again, for my own creative edification as well as your entertainment, we bring yet another sacrifice to that most wicked altar that we call the internet. My guest today is Dr. Ed Rosick. He's a physician and a writer. But let me shut up about that so I can start talking to him and stop doing the thing I hate the most, which is talk to myself. Welcome to the show, Doc. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. I've been up since 3:30 this morning. Had to take my daughter to the airport for early flight, so hopefully I'm caffeinated enough to sound halfway coherent for this.
Hey, I've been up since 4, and it sounded like you had a better reason than I did. So,
There we go.
I was just working on my notes for the show today, so at least you sounded like you should have been up that late.
Yep.
So you are, well, I'll let you get into that. So I like to kind of give everyone a chance to kind of tell us all where their story starts, because I think it's interesting when we hear about like how and why someone chooses to get on the path of becoming a writer. And I mean, it's not exactly a lavish lifestyle. Sometimes it can be heartbreaking and brow sweating. So you want to tell us where your story begins?
Yeah. Well, in actuality, my story begins when I was 5 years old. I've been writing forever. I wrote a little book of poetry when I was 5, and been writing ever since. Although kind of stopped when I hit puberty, when I learned about girls and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I probably could have been the next Stephen King if that wouldn't have happened, but that's okay.
So you
Um,
chose a harder path in life. Is
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, seriously, I've been writing forever. My my currently or my professional writing really began during medical school. One could say when I went to a workshop called Clarion Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Workshop that was held at Michigan State University. It was a 6 week long workshop, and it really elevated my writing to another level. After that workshop, 2 years later, I sold my first professional grade story, and it's been doing that ever since.
Well, that's awesome. I like to hear people's like kind of success stories when it comes to like workshops and lectures and stuff like that. What do you feel like you learned from this particular one that like really you felt like it elevated?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, I learned what makes a good story, what a good story from a mediocre story. I learned how to, as I say, ruthlessly edit my stories and just look at them very dispassionately and cut a hell of a lot of words out, because that's what, right? We're writers. We love to write words, and generally most of us write far too many words. I learned how
Yeah,
to do that.
that's why we got to cut them out.
Exactly. And I just learned that I could do this. I just learned that I could write with other people that had already sold profession at a professional level. So it helped give me the self-confidence to make that next step and start sending stuff out. Because as we all know as writers, for every sale you're going to get 10 to 100 rejections. At
Hmm.
least I do. So
No,
I don't know if
that's
everybody else does, but I
they
do too.
do. They just
So,
some of them don't admit it, but yeah,
yeah.
we're all getting rejected.
Yep.
I think that's why so many like writers tend to be okay. Like I probably not on your end because you stuck to a career path and kind of stuck with it in that regard. But a lot of writers they kind of bounce from job to job to job because like our kind of response to rejection is just like a thumbs up and move on. It's like, well, you didn't do a good job here. You go, okay, thanks, and then go find a new job. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you
So,
so you are a physician. You're practicing.
um, yes, still to a degree. So for 25 years or so, 25 give or take five, I don't remember right now. I was practicing physician at a couple Big Ten universities at Penn State and Michigan State. I ended up, for a variety of reasons that we won't get into this podcast, but I ended up retiring from Michigan State in 22. Sat around for about 6 months. Thought, I'm too young to be sitting around, and I need some money. So went out, and so now I'm working as a medical laboratory director at a plasma center where people donate plasma. Um,
Oh,
so
yeah.
yeah, it's a great job. And then I also volunteered at a homeless shelter here in town.
Oh,
So
well, that is admirable. I don't think enough
thanks.
people do enough. What's that like? I don't want to call it. Is it philanthropic? Is that a good term for that?
Uh, just volunteer work. I mean,
Yeah.
especially volunteering for something like the homeless, right? So what I do, I go out on Tuesday nights. That happens to be my night with about 10 medical students, and we go to a homeless shelter and we see we see the homeless, we see the patients, and see what we can do for them.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, I mean, yeah, you're doing more than most. I mean, most people would be capable of like doing like a food drive or something like that, but you actually have like working knowledge to help people that are probably in desperate need of some medical care. So that's really awesome. Um, so forgive my ignorance because I don't know anything about the medical field.
no,
Uh,
that's fine.
are you like a specialist in something, or are you just like general practitioner in regards to
Yeah,
medicine?
another great question. So my residency training, my background, my residency training is in preventive medicine and public health. But when I was at Penn State, Michigan State, they really didn't know what to do with me, so they just threw me in a primary care clinic. So I've been doing primary care slash family practice medicine for the last couple decades, 2, 3 decades.
Well, you
But
don't
my
look any older than a decade, so
oh, thanks. And then in 20, the first 9 months of the COVID epidemic, I ran 7 health centers for the public health service here in Lansing.
Jesus.
That
Uh,
was a special time.
yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I would
Yeah.
imagine just one, maybe two would be like a lot of stress and operational problems. Seven's a lot. So when did you start like publishing stuff? Because I know you've published in different places like Pulp House and DOA and Monstrous Tales. When did you start releasing your stuff?
So I started. So I started publishing back in even before that, back in the 80s. I was a poetry. I've always written poetry, and so in the 80s I got stuff published in journals and literary magazines. So that took me up to Clarion. But I was writing short stories too, and accumulating a whole hell of a lot of rejections. So that took me to Clarion. It was after Clarion that I started finally breaking into the short story market.
So you started with poetry. What kind of poems do you favor? Like, what do you feel like your style is?
Free verse. Um, I mean, probably my favorite poet is Jim Harrison. I don't know if you know him. He's a Midwestern poet. He's from Michigan. Incredible. I mean, he's a poet. He's written novels. He's wrote because he wrote. He's passed away, unfortunately. But if any, and I'm not on his level and by any means of the imagination, but somebody I really like to read and probably model my stuff after is him.
And so when you started publishing in these places, do you feel like you got a pretty good reception from your work?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was again. It's as you know, you got to have the hide of an alligator or rhinoceros to be a writer because you're for every one I'm getting 100, and I mean, my rejection rate is far higher than my acceptance rate.
I actually
Um,
think it's a lot harder today than it used to be back in the day of being a writer because I think you're just so like met with the face of disinterest on a grander scale today because people will like write stuff and they'll put it up on Facebook or wherever and be like, hey guys, what do you think? Zero responses, no interaction. You're just like, oh, no one gives a shit. Whereas back in the day, you just submit it and you go, oh, they don't care or they don't care. It's eventually someone cares. But I think it is harder today to be a writer just because you really just have to either like put it out there and hope someone responds, but just ignore the zero response or the negative stuff or people being trolls. I get hit with a lot of trolls on the
All that.
channel. Yeah. And so when did you move on to like I'm gonna create my first short story? Is it a series of stories or it is a single story? Deep Roots.
So Deep Roots it's a novel. It's probably, I don't know, 80, 90,000 words.
Oh, so it's a complete novel.
Complete novel. Yep. It actually was first printed as a 9,000 word short story a long time ago, 2010, we'll say. But even when I wrote that as a short story, I knew it was a novel. I just wasn't good enough back in 2010 or whenever I wrote it to write it as a novel. But it always kept percolating in my head, and finally I just sat down and started writing it. And I wrote it, and sent it out to some beta readers and got feedback on it. Deep Roots actually, and then really came alive when I went out to another workshop called Taoist Toolbox out in New Mexico. That was 2012, I think. And so that was a 2 week intensive workshop, really a novel writing workshop. And so I probably wrote 10 chapters when I was out there over those 2 weeks and workshop the hell out of them. And thought, this is going well. I think this is going to work. And so came home and spent another 2, 3 years and finished a novel, and then just started sending it out.
Man, you seem to have a lot of success with these workshops.
I do. I need to start going to more, maybe.
Well, let me kind of point you in a direction. It's free. It's where I gained a lot of my knowledge when I first was like, I'm going to take this serious. I'm going to educate myself. There's a bunch of YouTube clips of Brandon Sanderson giving a lecture, and
Mm,
it's like they're each like two and a half hours long. And it's like the entire semester of a class.
wow.
And I think he has. I actually think he has a duplicates for like the first year and then like the following year.
Mhm.
But it's so enriching because he talks about a lot of aspects of storytelling, but also like he gets into the business, what to expect when you're trying to get published, um, what to expect when you're actually selling publications, how stories should be structured, things to consider. He has a whole laws system for magic. And it's really useful because it feels like you're sitting in the class and like people are asking questions and he's giving answers that you wouldn't find like if you just watched a YouTube video. So it's
Right.
like you're really in the class and it's kind of cool, but it's very informative. I encourage everybody to check him out. He is not a sponsor, so
No, I will. Thank you.
um, but that's your first book, and that leads you into what we're talking about today, which is a collection of short stories. Am I correct? And it's called
Yep.
"Where the Grass Don't Grow and the Vultures Sing," which I love the title. I think it's
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
some titles are short, and I think those are good, and I like those kind of like breathy titles, and that's one of them. It feels very
Thanks.
poetic.
Thanks. Yeah, it was because my stories are they're stories set in this world, but they're off kilter. It's almost like the old Twilight Zone, Night Gallery stuff, where it's our world, but it's not.
Mm.
It is, but it isn't. It's askewed. So just where the grass don't grow and vultures sing. People ask me, where'd you get that title? Well, I don't know. It just came to me. It was one of those things I thought, I really like that title. That's what I'm going to use. I've never written a story entitled that. I think it's a great title for a story. I just don't know what the story's about yet. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
write it
it
one day.
it it smacks of like an old western's description of a dried up water basin. So it's like,
Oh, I like
like
that.
you immediately kind of get the sense of what kind of worldscape it's trying to depict. I think it's smart. I love it. Before I
Nice.
get too far into that, so that one's published by Bainham Books, right?
Bain Books Publishing over in England.
Ooh, an England company.
Yep.
Um, Before I get too into that, you did mention that you had some recent issues with Deep Roots and
Yeah. So Deep Roots was published, what, 20, I don't know, 21, something maybe like that. The pandemic years are kind of, they all run together.
yeah.
Let's say 21. by a company at the time called Thurston Howell Publications. I love that. I love that name. So uh, where was a good. It seemed to be a good fit. Unfortunately, it was like many small presses, run essentially by one person. And for one person to run an entire publishing company, man, it just seems a recipe disaster for me. And for me, it did turn out that way because while the book did get published, I wasn't getting any royalties from it. So we got into a big issue with the publisher about royalties. Finally got that resolved with the help of the editor of the Horror Zine, which is a great online publication. If you guys don't know about that, please look that up. Jeannie Richter, incredible person, doesn't know me from Adam. She just, I, the reason I reached out to her because I respect what she does, and she had published a story and some poems of mine, and she helped me get my royalties, at least some of my royalties, maybe all of them. It was hard to tell. So what I did, finally got my royalties from Deep Roots, and I got the rights back to Deep Roots. So it's now my book again. Thurston Howell, unfortunately for them, went out of business. So I have Deep Roots still around. I toy with the idea of rewriting it or revising it and sending it out, and I might, but I have other things going on right now. So one day it might be out there again. We'll see.
Yeah, right now it's just collecting dust. But I mean, that
Yep,
is a yeah. I mean, that's awesome that she was able to help you. Can you give us that the the site
sure.
one more time?
It's called The Horror Zine. So The Horror Zine, Zine. At wallward.com. Great. She publishes stories there for free. It's a great site. I mean, she does so much for writers. It's really incredible.
Yeah, definitely check her out
Yeah.
if you guys have the chance. So I mean, that is awesome. That's kind of like a writer's biggest fear is like someone's just gonna abuse their own IP and then
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And it is. We put that out there, and that's a risk you take. Again, I was fortunate in that I was able to get the rights back. I have the paperwork, the legal paperwork that says the rights to this novel are now mine again. But a lot of writers that it takes them years to get that back.
If ever, yeah.
If ever, right. So, right now if you go online, you really, as far as I know, and I look every now and then to see if Deep Roots is floating around out there, but it's not. It's people can't get it. And they shouldn't. So
Well, yeah, at least until you put it back out there.
absolutely. Exactly.
Well, that's I mean that's good. It's tragic, but a good ending.
I
Like every
Yeah,
book.
and it's a learning yeah, it's a learning experience, and it's something I can help other people hopefully avoid. I mean, you can have the best of intentions, and the publisher can have the best of intentions. I don't think the publisher was a bad person, so to speak. I just think he got in over his head.
Yeah, I think that's something for people to consider. I do think as writers we kind of get a little too excited when like term publisher or publishing house comes up, or
Hmm.
we get an acceptance letter. Do your homework. Make sure
Absolutely.
check into them. Make sure. I think there's a website out there. I'm gonna have to write it down sometime because I keep looking it up and I keep forgetting. But there is a website out there that kind of has a list of good businesses, bad businesses, people that are maybe a little on the sketchy side. So get a vibe for what is possible.
Hmm.
And so like yeah, like Ed brought up, it just I don't I kind of inclined to agree with Ed. Like he may not have been a bad person, just had too much, bit off more than he could chew, and
Yep.
couldn't push it across the finish line like he probably hoped he could.
Yep.
Um, so just kind of keep those things in mind. Um, so that moves us on to what we were talking about, Bane and Books. I'm guessing you're having a much better experience.
Yes. I mean, so far, we'll see when that first royalty check is supposed to roll in, but so far she's been really good.
And is this like a traditional publisher, or is it a hybrid, or
No, it's traditional. I've never done hybrid. I've never done a pay for play, and I don't have anything against it. I know a lot of writers will talk down about hybrids, but hey, go with what you feel is right. I've just always wanted. I'm old school, right? I'm of the opinion, and maybe it'll change in the future, but I'm of the opinion that all money should flow to the writer, right?
yeah,
We're the ones making the product. It's my product. Where the grass don't where the grass don't grow and vultures sing is my product. Deep Roots is my product. So uh, it's a traditional publisher, small press again, but she has out about, oh my gosh, 90 titles, maybe a lot. She's got a lot of books out, so it's not a little publishing company. She's got a lot going on.
And
So
did you go through a agent, or did you like reach out to the company directly?
just reached out to the company, searching online, like you said, see who seems reputable, and wrote a bunch of them and talked to her and said, hey, this is my book. Here's what I'm proposing. And she said, boy, yeah, sounds great. I think I'll let's see if we get a contract together. And we did. So here we are.
I might consider doing that route. I initially, because I'm still in my journey of trying to become traditionally published.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I put one self-published short story out there. It's on Amazon. It's called In Pursuit of Death. Um, and I just like the amount of energy I had to put into promoting it was a little bit more than I could undertake continuously. So that
Yep.
kind of dropped off. But I've always been trying to do traditional, and I've been going through sales agents, literary agents,
Mm-hmm.
and my experience with them is not the best. I think I'm garbage at a query letter, but that might be my problem. I think there's a strange disconnect that's happening with some literary agents today, where it just feels like they're trying to like capitalize on a market versus understanding that they kind of dictate the market. At least in my
Yeah.
eyes, they dictate it. Nobody. The example I use is nobody really thought superhero movies were going to be sellers until someone made a damn good superhero movie, and now that's all we have. And,
Exactly.
and so the same thing is kind of true with literary art, where it's like nobody really knows what's good or not, or what could explode until it's out there. And
Exactly.
it's hard for writers of medium speed. I don't know how fast would you say you produce?
Slow. I would say I'm slow. I would even being semi-retired, I'm slow.
Yeah,
But
and it's like by the time we write something that's like hip in the market, by the time we're done with it and we feel like it's ready to go, the market's shifted, and it's
oh,
just like, well, now it's not good.
absolutely, I would always strongly encourage writers, whether they're new writers or seasoned writers, do not try to follow the market. You're as you just said, you're always going to play catch up. You're always going to be the dog trying to catch his tail.
Yeah.
Right? My strongest advice to any writer, especially young writers: write what you want to write. Write. Here's my advice. Here's my advice for the podcast. Write for yourself. When people ask who do you write for, I write for me. That's who I write for. If I'm pleased with what I've written, I'm good. If everybody else thinks it's a piece of shit, then okay, good for them. If it's good enough for me, if I like it, then great. So if you write for yourself, it makes it, at least for me, I think it makes it a lot easier. Because if you're always going to be your own worst critic, you're always going to be your hardest critic. And if you can put something out there, you say, you know what, this is pretty damn good, then great. Then write it and put it out. And if nobody buys it, then nobody buys it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's okay.
100%. Have trust in your own abilities. I mean, don't build the trust in your own abilities to have trust in
Exactly.
it. Yeah, don't just
Absolutely.
assume that you're great.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a craft, right? It's an art.
Hmm.
It's a craft. You have to learn it. You have to become good at it. And my writing today is definitely better than it was 15 years ago. But so, and I hope in 15 years it'll be better than it is today.
Yeah, you have to
But
educate yourself to kind of stick in the vein of medical theory. You know, just because you watch Grey's Anatomy doesn't mean you can carve into people and save their life. All right, you have to educate yourself on the
absolutely,
techniques to do that and develop the skills. Um,
absolutely.
but I'm glad you found a new home there. I'm glad I'm not. I don't feel like I'm alone in my assessment of literary agents at the time at the moment.
You are not.
I mean,
You're
I'm
on
not
a
trying to crap on them or anything like that. I just feel
no,
like some
no,
of
no.
them are just being like it's a weird dichotomy that they seem to be having
It
with
is.
things. But I kind of want to move on to the story that you submitted because, like, in case anybody doesn't know, when we do these seasons, we ask everyone to kind of submit an application, and in that we ask for a few different things. One of them being a sample of your work. And the story you submitted to us is a short story called Leshy. You want to kind of explain what that is with us?
Yeah, Leshy is a story about a group of army folks that get called by the CIA to infiltrate Siberia, Russia, to look for a new ICBM base that our satellites can't find. But rather than find the ICBM base, they find a horrible demonic entity called the Leshe.
And it kind of gives me, I mean, the setup that I was reading when we were given it kind of gave me like the Thing vibes. I don't know if that's what
Mm.
you were going for, but that's just kind of the vibe I was getting.
Oh, well, thanks. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. I've
Hey,
seen that like probably a dozen times. Yeah. No, I just wanted to go for isolation. I wanted to go it's written in first person by the lieutenant's point of view. I want to give his point of view that he's totally he cares about his troops more than anything, more than himself, and yet you know there's bad things happen to him. I don't want to ruin the story, but it just his feelings of hopelessness and what can I do to get us out of this situation. I got us into this situation, so it's my duty to get us out of this situation.
so one question I did have, you said it was like a demonic thing. So is it breaching the wall of like supernatural, or are we kind of like in cryptid territory where yeah, it's called a Leshy, but it's the same kind of thing as the abominable snowman, or you know,
Yeah,
as far as myth goes.
so in myth, so it's a true creature in myth. If you look it up, it's in the Inuits of Alaska and eastern Siberia because they were pretty much really the same people originally. Um, so it's a real myth. I mean, they do believe in it. It's more of a in their from their mythology. What
As
I read
real
it
as myths can be. Yeah.
correct, right? It's a spirit entity that inhabits the forest. It can be anything from a small imp to a large monstrous creature. And just because I like large monstrous creatures, that's what I made this one. But yeah, so it's not a cryptid in terms of like a yeti or a Sasquatch or something like that, but it's more supernatural.
Okay. Well, that's cool. And from my very limited knowledge on it, remembering back, leshies are like I know they're like spirit, like wood spirits, but
Right.
they're often depicted as like being like tree like, right?
They can be.
Or vine
Yep.
like.
Yep. Tree like, vine like. Yeah. And so again, the creature in this story is more like that. It's a monstrous being.
Well, I feel like that kind of leads us into like a little bit of an open discussion here. I am kind of curious as to like what made you kind of go like with that choice for your monster, will so you know to say. Uh, there's a lot of different options out there. You don't see a lot of people pulling from myths.
You don't, and I don't know why that is because I mean it's endless. It's
There's a lot.
I have books on myth. I mean I get ideas. That's where I got the idea for Lesha. I wanted a story set in Siberia, in eastern Siberia. Okay, get my myth book out. What what spirits, what demons, what monsters are in eastern Siberia? Native monsters. Oh, here's Leshe. Let's read on that. I thought, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect for the story. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, it's a unique choice. I've talked to a fellow author recently in this podcast where he went in like kind of he felt like gorgons weren't like really established in
Mm,
horror, and so he
no.
wanted to write a story found in place and like that. I think there's a lot of like material there, and I don't think people are reaching into that enough.
No, huge amount. I agree. Like I say, I have books on it. I if I'm stuck, if I just can't write something, right? We all get writer's block. At least I do. I'll just sit down with those books. Okay, let's go through this. What? Oh yeah, here. This would be a cool monster to write about. Go
Yeah,
from there.
I think there's just a plethora in there. I think people kind of get a little too wrapped up in trying to create something original. But it's like original's nice, but it's like I think you're overshooting what the problem is, and that's the problem is it's not an original idea. It's more or less an original presentation.
You hit it on the head. You
Yeah.
hit it on the head, Ryan. It's an original presentation. I mean, has anybody written a story about Lacey like that? I don't think so.
No,
But
no.
it's my story. So, but you can do that for any creature, any myth, any of them.
Yeah, I think as long, especially, I think you're bound for success if you're sticking, if you're trying to like respect the
Oh,
tradition in which the lore was created, and you're using that as some backdrop. But I think there's, because it's a myth, there's so much open to interpretation. There's, I think authors kind of need to start looking a little bit more to the past in
mhm.
terms of recreating, and not like Disney where they're like looking back 10 years and be like, let's recreate this thing we created.
Exactly.
you know
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of good ideas back there. I don't see enough, like, I think like dragons, I'm gonna kind of go into a bit of a tangent here if you don't mind,
Sure.
but like dragons, I feel like have become like monsters,
Hmm.
and I think there's something lost in the idea of an intelligent dragon, because you have
Hmm.
this thing that's about the size of a building that can fly and breathe fire. And yeah, that's pretty scary, but when you increase its intelligence, it gets far more frightening, And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that people need to start portraying more. Um, what Not to derail that, but I just have to cut myself off,
No,
otherwise I'll just
no,
keep
no.
talking for
That's okay.
hours.
No, do you remember that movie that had it was a intelligent talking dragon with Sean Connery's voice?
Yes,
Yeah.
Dragonheart. Yes,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
watched that so much as a kid.
That's a great movie. I did too. It's a great flick.
Yeah, and I think oh man, you're gonna get me into a tangent here. So much about that movie is bad.
Oh,
It's like,
absolutely.
I mean, at
But
the time, I feel like the graphics were good, but you look at it now, it's like that is horrible graphics. But the idea, the concept that a knight, like a fallen knight, has like sworn vengeance against dragons and has like developed a way to make money off of killing them, and then is finds himself with the last dragon,
yep.
and then he's just like, well, let's just continue a farce. So I
Exactly.
can continue to make money, you can
Yeah.
continue to live. That's
Yep.
such a genius concept.
It
I
was. It was a fun movie.
Yeah, I would have rather watched the entire movie just about that relationship.
Exactly. Yep.
The whole heart sharing with the bad prince thing, it was okay.
Yeah.
I would have just watched the dragon and a dragon knight
Yep.
conning villages
I know.
for 2 hours. I would have
Yep.
been behind that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, man, there's just not enough, especially like when we're coming into like D&D. Like, I don't know if you know anything about D&D, but
I
like
do.
they're starting to release movies now, and the biggest problem with dragons and Dungeons and Dragons, when they create films about them, is they're just a movie monster. Sometimes they're
Yep.
just like, they might as well be giant fire breathing sky cats, because they have like no will of their own, and they're
Right.
always tied in some mess. But in D&D, dragons are insanely intelligent, often scheming things. They have the ability to cast magic, to the point to where they can change their own form and become humans, and so you have like human dragons secretly
Yeah.
running cities that nobody knows about. That shit is cool, and I think we
It
need to
is
start
cool.
leaning into that.
Yep. I agree.
Sorry,
I agree. No, that's okay.
I
That's
nerd
very
out
cool.
pretty hard.
That's all right. So can I.
um, I do want to kind of ask you about your writing process. Every writer has their own process. Like, how do you go about it? Like, what's your writing day kind of look like?
So I write best in the morning, early afternoon, um, especially now that I'm, semi-retired. I only go into work, my work at the plasma center 1 day a week. So 4 days a week. I get up, have breakfast, walk my dog. My wife works, so she's off. So it's just me and the dog at home. Make my coffee and sit down for anywhere, 2, 3, 4 hours. Just how good is the day of writing, right? Are things flowing? Some days, like today, with very little sleep, my writing has been almost nothing. And that's okay. And I don't beat myself up over that. Do what you can do, right? Some
Yeah.
days you'll kick out 5, 10 pages. Some days I'll kick out 2 paragraphs. Um, but that's usually my day. I mean, that's my writing is just get up, eat breakfast, do stuff with my dog, then just sit down for a few hours and write.
And I imagine being a physician and having to go through like medical school and stuff like that. I imagine that kind of discipline that you develop there helps translate to your discipline in your writing, and like at least to the point of like setting a schedule and coming and sitting down every day. And
Maybe I don't know. I don't know if I really consider myself a very disciplined writer. It's just that I know, again, you got to write to call yourself a writer, right? If you don't write, you're a hypothetical writer, but you're not a writer. I mean, you need to write, and you need to get stuff down on the page or on the computer screen or whatever you use.
you know,
So I'm one of those people. I half joke that I need to live to be about 180 to complete everything I want to write. So I'm just trying to write what I want to write now, and see what I can come up with.
well, I'm right there with you. I feel like I need to be 180 just to complete my first full novel. So
I hear you. It feels that way sometimes.
yeah, I'm actually in the process. I have a novella that's at I think 28,000 words,
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
trying to extend it into novel length. With I the last time I checked, is somewhere between like 32 and 35,000. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to extend it without making it feel forced that I'm extending it.
Mhm.
So that's a bit of a challenge.
It
But
is.
what are your do you have any favorite authors, favorite books, things that what kind of things inspire you as far as
Yeah.
like wanting to write?
Good question. I mean, certainly younger days, beginning the big names, right? Stephen King, Dean Koontz, John Shirley, Richard Lehman. Those back in the 80s, 90s were really the names that inspired me. Going back to Jim Harrison, he always inspired me just because he's such a poetic writer, and I just love the way he wrote. Um, I read, again. My advice to especially beginning writers is read everything. I mean, I read everything from westerns to literary novels to horror novels. Tell you the truth, there's not a lot of science fiction writers now that really float my boat. Same with fantasy. I mean, I don't think I there's some out there, but not that. I'm a pretty tough reader these days. I mean,
I think it's a. I'm gonna say this, knowing the fact that I don't follow my own advice or yours, which is yeah, if you want to write, you should read. Um, I think you should read more than as a fan. Like if you're gonna read
absolutely.
something, try to read it in the aspect of like analyzing what the writer is doing, why they're doing it,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
and read whatever you can, because there's a lot of elements that are in different stories that can be utilized in your story. And so, what elements? What kind of kick that for you? Like, what elements do you feel like are essential to a good story?
That's a great question. Pacing, you got to keep the reader engaged, especially in our ADHD world we live in.
Yeah,
Yeah, all of us. All of us. You got to keep the reader engaged. I think you have to have very interesting characters. So my characters are almost all in the gray zone, meaning there's really no perfect, nice and shining armor, and there's no mustache twirling James Bond villains. There's people in gray, right? There are people that we can relate to because the vast majority of us aren't sinners or saints. We're people. We have our good points, we have our bad points, and so the people in my stories have that. There's obviously protagonists and antagonists because you have to have that. You have to have tension. Always got to keep tension in your stories.
hmm
But I think if you can do that, narration, scene. I think scene's very important. Hopefully, readers, especially when they read "Where the Grass Don't Grow and Vultures Sing," will get a sense of scene, right? Whether they're in the wilds of Siberia or the streets of Detroit, they feel like, yeah, we're there. So I think setting the scene is pretty important.
Well, I mean, we'll take that in consideration. What is your thought process on the common advice of show don't tell?
I, I think that's overall very, very good. But again, right? Don't get too wrapped up in that. Sometimes you got to tell. Sometimes it's better to tell in two sentences than show in two paragraphs, because you might not need two paragraphs. You might just need to just tell it in a couple sentences. So that's where the art and craft and writing comes in. When do I do that? When don't I do that? How do I ascertain which one of those needs to happen? And it's hard to do. And sometimes I'll read stuff and I'll write it and I'll read it over and think, yeah, that's bullshit. I just need to tell rather than write out these flowery, 2-page showing scenes. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't need that. It's not really getting me anywhere. It's not keeping the pace up enough for me. So,
Yeah, I think, and this is why I encourage people to expose themselves as much to whatever they can story wise. One of my favorite things to do is to compare show versus tell to a common problem in D&D. I don't know, have you ever participated in D&D? Played
I
it?
have not. Nope.
So it's kind of like a narrative game where there's a one person describing stuff and everyone else is listening to it. Uh, and the common problem is the DM, who is the guy describing everything,
Okay.
will he will add just a smidge of detail to a thing that is unimportant, and then the entire group at the table will assume it is the most important fact, and they can't get off of it. There's a great
Mhm.
example on Critical Role where Matt talks about a chair being in a room, and everyone's like, this chair is important. They're like examining this chair, they're taking up hours examining a chair. They think it's like was like a torture device or something like that. They're just going through all these things, they're blowing it up in their head, all because he was just trying to describe that something happened in this room and someone sat in this chair, maybe like used it to sit down to open up a chest, and he was just trying to convey that, but they took it as being super important. And
Mhm.
when you're telling a story, that makes the difference between show and tell. Show the important stuff, tell the stuff to get the story moving.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So, what I know, like, is I'm guessing based on what you sent in, like how you described it, and I think I overheard it in one other interview in which you were in, where you were describing where the grass don't grow as being kind of like a series of speculative fiction, possibly leaning into horror. All those stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely dark. I describe it as dark speculative fiction, right? I mean, if you want to really get nitty gritty, you could describe some of the stories as dark fantasy. You can describe some of them as science fiction. You can describe some of them as horror. I like the term dark speculative fiction
It's a good
because
term.
yeah, it encompasses a lot. Like I guess it just made me think of one of my favorite writers of all time, still is today, is Joe Lansdale, who's written all sorts of stuff. But a lot of his stuff I would describe as dark speculative fiction.
So, what do you feel like appeals to you in that type of genre? Like, what draws you to write those kinds of stories?
Um, that's another good question. I think the depth and breadth of stories you can write in that genre, in that dark speculative fiction area. So you can write things that are more science fiction. Covenant of the Ark is one of the stories in the book. You probably describe that as more science fiction. Um, for the entertainment of the gods, the lead story in the book is more definitely because it has aliens. It's set in the future. One could say, well, that's science fiction, but it's really not. They're not. There's more. There's horrific elements to both those. Um, so I think it just allows me to write. It just gives me a bigger canvas to write on. I often relate writers to painters, right? Our painters have a canvas and they put paint on there. Our canvas is the keyboard or paper that we put words on. That's our paint. So it gives me a bigger canvas, right? Instead of using a little canvas, I have the Sistine Chapel to paint on.
What is your preference? Is it like a smaller contained story with very developed characters, or do you kind of like is like a larger scale story with less defined characters? Now, I'm not saying like baseline people, but like just people that it's like the interest isn't so much in their history or their background, but it's like what they're doing kind of focus. Like, where do you
Right.
lean?
So short story versus novel. Is that what I'm hearing? Because
I mean, not necessarily like the story structure. So, like, you could have insanely in-depth characters, but everything just takes place in a single village, or you have this grand scape, and we don't necessarily need to understand the back motivations of each character. They're just we kind of understand their role, and then they move through the world.
yeah, probably I lean toward the latter than the former. It's hard though. It's what does the story call for? And I'll tell that to new writers. What does the story call for? What does the story need? Um, I don't shoehorn certain characters or certain viewpoints into my stories because I think that's disingenuous. I think you need to write the story. What does the story need? Right? If the story needs to be about X, Y, and Z, then write X, Y, and Z. If it needs to be about A, B, and C, write A, B, and C. Let the story dictate what it calls for.
And do you have a particular preference on like point of view when you write?
Um, Man, your questions are great. For
Thank
me,
you.
right? Yeah, for me, writing first person point of view is easier. Let me put it that way. It's easier for me.
Wow.
So I always have to I always have to check myself if I start writing a new story and it's in first person. I got to think, okay, is it really in first person, or are you just having a really lazy time right now? I just want to write in first because for me it's just easier. I like them both. I mean, right now the novel I'm working on two novels, and one of the novels it's written first person point of view. The other novel it's third person. So it really, again, what does it call for?
Yeah, and I also think it's important for writers to kind of be present of mind of like how a point of view can alter a story experience.
Hmm.
You know,
Oh, absolutely.
I've definitely not only on here heard people attest to this, but I've experienced it myself where I'll write a story in a particular point of view, and the material we're talking about is so intense that hearing it from the person's point of view is just too much. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
better to write that kind of that story from like an outside, almost like you're outside looking in instead of being
Hmm.
inside the person's head.
Yep.
So that's something to consider. Because I always tell people, not that I don't think any of your stories in this book, at least, address like abuse or trauma. Um, but
I
whenever,
don't. I don't think so.
yeah, I haven't read all of it, so I don't know, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll leave you as the author to tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always recommend like people taking a little bit more care when they're writing those things because I do think those stories are important to hear. I think they're impactful. I think in some cases they're therapeutic, if not cathartic for people to experience on an outside level. But you don't
Hmm.
want to re-traumatize someone.
Yep.
Um, I've had a blast talking with you. I do think
Same here.
we're coming up on the end here.
Okay.
Um, you want to let everyone know where we can find where the grass don't grow and the vultures sing?
Sure. Well, you can find it, of course, on the number one big brother, Amazon.com. You can find it at
Not a sponsor.
yeah. No, I wish it were for you. Um, you can find it on my website at Ed Rosick. That's EDROSICK.net. On there, you can find links to where you can order it and other stuff and free stories on there. So I put some excerpts every month from the collection on there, so people can get an idea of what my stories are like, and if they like it, buy the book. If not, that's great too.
Well, I think I encourage everyone to check it out. Buy it on Amazon. Let's help raise his royalties.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as a quick reminder, you can find him at edrosick.net. That's Ed rosick.net. I want to remind everyone on our Facebook channel, we release telltale writing prompts every Tuesday. I encourage everyone to participate. Ed, you're more than welcome to get on these. It's a real simple idea. I find an image on the internet. Often it's fantasy or sci-fi, but there's a bunch of different stuff in there wrapped in there. I look at the image, I see a story, I create that story. Me or Sean will do it. And then we encourage people to comment their story, what they see when they look at the image. It can be poetry, it can be just dialogue between two characters, it can be prose or just a lore dump. We don't care, just kind of participate. We love to
Okay.
see what other people see. And so in the mornings I release the written form, and in the afternoons I like add some audio to it, so you can just listen to it if you want. Keep an eye on our Facebook for any updates, such as new episodes that are going on the channel, what Sean and I are up to, and we ask that you like, comment, and subscribe both on the YouTube and the Facebook. We hope that you will like, comment, and subscribe, Ed. It was been a blast. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I just thank you for having me on, and for all the new writers out there, keep doing it. Keep writing. You'll get something done.
That's great advice. Thank you, Ed. Let's go ahead and fade to black.